Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of Tipplers 2 Cents. I am your host and creator, Chris Walters, and joining me is co-host and co-creator, Sean Knox. Sean, would you kindly say hello?
Well, shove a stick on my ass and call me a taffy apple. How the hell are you guys?
Today, we are going to dive into and explore the mysteries of UFOs, aliens from outer space, and some ideas of what life might be like beyond the stars and after Earth is no longer our home. With time, will we become the aliens ourselves? Some of the questions that we'll be asking after. Now, of course, it's necessary first for me to go over what the whole purpose of this show is, and for that, I'm going to go ahead and let Sean detail that for you here. Sean?
Yeah, no problem. Have you guys ever had one of those nights where you just get completely fucking trashed and stay up until the sun comes up with your friends, just discussing the ins and outs of absolutely everything? Well, me and Chris have had a lot of those memories together, and that's exactly what we're trying to replicate. I don't know about you guys, but those nights are some of the best memories I have, and what we hope to do with this show is make some of those exact same memories with you.
Yeah, and just basically, we're both super, super curious guys that just love to talk about fucking everything. And of course, we love beer and alcohol in general, so we thought, why not just throw that in there too? With that said, we'd also both like to give a big, big thank you to anybody that is listening and supporting us in this endeavor. All of it's coming from me and Sean, funding, equipment, all that stuff. So you guys listening just puts meaning into all that time and any money that we spend on this. So again, thank you. We love you. Please try to spread the word as much as you can. We both are hoping to do this for a while and hope that it becomes popular enough for us to justify doing it. Today, I'm going to be drinking some good old Jameson and Lagunitas IPAs. Sean, what are you drinking, my dude?
I am drinking some Japanese Centauri whiskey and Corona Extras because I'm a pussy. I'm drinking the fucking smaller ones too. I didn't know when I bought it at Walmart.
You bought those little fucking baby bottle ones.
Yeah, I bought those 7-ounce ones, so they're just a little baby ones. So I'm drinking like 3 of those and some Centauri whiskey.
Yeah, whatever. Well, let's go ahead and toast to our very first episode of this podcast, and hopefully the start of something good here. I'm gonna go ahead and crack mine open. Try to do it with the mic so you guys can hear it happening. Hear that little. All right. Well, cheers, mate.
Cheers.
Oh man, it's been a minute. All right. So, now that we got all that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into the subject of our very first episode, UFOs, Extraterrestrials, and Life Beyond Earth. UFOs. What is a UFO? Merriam-Webster defines it simply as an unidentified flying object, an acronym first used in 1953. But what exactly does that mean? Can any old object in the sky that defies definition be classified as a UFO? The short answer is yes. Literally anything that we see in the sky and can identify is a UFO, hence unidentified flying object. That said, we all know what it typically refers to, and that's alien spacecrafts. The more identifying term flying saucer is also used for these objects, and was actually used earlier back in 1947. The term flying saucer, of course, refers to a disc-like spacecraft thought to be piloted by extraterrestrials. UFO sightings date back to as early as 1639, when a then-Governor John Winthrop reported that 3 Englishmen on a boat had seen a light in the sky, and I'm quoting here, ran as fast as an arrow. So basically, these 3 old-timey English dudes are just out chilling on a boat, or whatever the fuck you're doing out on a lake at nighttime with 2 other dudes back then, especially in 1639. Like, why the fuck? Why are 3 English dudes on a boat at nighttime in 1639? What are you guys doing? It's got to be some, interplay stuff is what I'm assuming. Because back then, I can't imagine that stuff flies by very easily under the radar, so you probably got to go out on a lake and do that stuff.
Yeah, I don't see any real utility reason for them to go out on. That sounds pretty fucking romantic. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. If you took me out on a boat, I'd be like, hey, you know what, man? I've been thinking.
I don't know. I tried to spitball like what 3 dudes back in 1639 could be doing on a boat, and that's what I came up with. They got to be, got to be sucking that dick. But anyway, 3 dudes out on the lake at nighttime in 1639. They see this giant light in the sky that moves really, really fast. And, that's kind of amazing to me that not only is this, the first UFO that's reported way back in 1639, but just like, what could it even possibly be? Because there's no sort of like spotlights back then. I can't remember if planes were invented then, but I don't think so. I think that's quite a bit later. I think that's in the
way later.
1900s.
Yeah, that's like 1900s, I believe.
Yeah, so I mean, like, what could it even possibly be? Like, do you have any, opinion on that?
I'm not sure. Honestly, and just spitballing here, I think it could have been a lighthouse that might have just been, viewed a little bit obscurely. Like maybe it was foggy. Like it doesn't. There's no real other details other than what they apparently had seen.
Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of additional information. This was pretty straightforward story from what I found, and that's actually a pretty good interpretation. I never really thought about it being a lighthouse. That makes actually a lot of sense, but I would just assume that since it's out on a lake and these dudes are obviously on a boat, hopefully they would have some more common sense than to think it was a lighthouse.
Yeah. I don't know. These kind of interpretations are always a little bit weird. Like the very first sighting I have that I found was in 1440 BC. According to the disputed Thule papyrus, which is claimed to be a transcription of Egyptian papyrus dating back, dating from the reign of Thutmose III. In the scribes of the pharaoh Thutmose III, reported that fiery discs were encountered floating all over the skies. And not gonna lie, that scares the shit out of me. Like that is a biblical level of like such a visual that honestly can scare the shit out of me. And there's no other explanation for it. Like at least with the sighting with the Englishman, it can probably be explained away.
Yeah.
And I have no views on thinking like it could be trying to be viewed as a religious thing, but it is disputed, so nobody really knows whether it's meant to be factual or not. And like, but tell me that doesn't scare the shit out of you. Like if you were just in ancient Egypt and fiery fucking discs are floating over the pyramids.
Yeah, it is pretty fucking crazy. Because just especially like you don't know, like there's no possible thing that it could be like that I can think of. And it was the same, like when I was researching all this stuff, I came across this video, and the guy was talking about how these early Greeks were talking about flying shields in the sky. And of course, to them, they thought of it as more of like, something to do with their deity. But it's obviously referencing flying saucers, and that's just crazy that, even back then they were getting sightings like that. But anyway, referring to the light that those three Englishmen saw, some people have speculated that the light they saw could have been a phenomenon known as, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, ignis fatuus. I'm going to assume that's wrong, but right. It sounds right. But ignis fatuus is a pale light that appears over marshes during the night, caused by the combustion of gas and decomposed organic matter. So basically, it'd just be like gases releasing from like dying plant life, or like maybe there's like a dead carcass that's trapped in the mud. Stuff like that. Corroborating this sighting, though, a couple of other people apparently saw this light, and I guess they were credible people, and all of these people were miles and miles away from the three guys that were in the boat. Well, get this.
They were trying to watch and get some action, that's why.
Yeah, they're spying on the dudes all fucking on the boat. They're like, hey, look at those fucking dudes. And they're like, wait, what's that? But anyway, after the light finally disappeared, the three guys ended up finding themselves a whole mile away from where they originally were, like a mile upriver, and it was like they had been transported by the light they saw. And it's kind of weird because they didn't drift that way because the tide was coming, from that direction. They were going upriver. It's just weird that they traveled a whole mile unaccounted for against the tide upriver. But now all that's really to be said by any sort of expert who's analyzed this, and I use air quotes when I say expert just because we're talking about aliens. Can't really be an expert on shit that we don't know is real.
Yeah.
But these experts say that these men may have been abducted and were unaware of it, and that maybe the light was, some sort of distraction tool that the aliens used when they were abducting them. Some sort of like hypnotization shit. And we'll go into abductions a little bit more here, but Sean, why don't you take over for a minute while I go ahead and quench my thirst on some Lagunitas?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, just with these two claims, of course, there's been plenty and plenty of numerous sightings throughout the years, dating way far back, to ancient Egyptians, probably even further back than that, but there's no documented versions of any sightings, before that. Since then, there have been thousands upon thousands of UFO sightings all over the world. According to the National UFO Reporting Center, approximately 6,199 separate reports of UFO sightings were made last year. Over fucking 6,000. Yeah. That's insane, bro.
That's a lot.
The peak year for UFO sightings claims were actually in 2014 with around 8,400, but after that, alleged UFO sightings have been on a downward trend until this big meme/event that ended up gaining a lot of traction. I'm sure a lot of you guys remember this, but it was the Storm Area 51 They Can't Stop All of Us event dated for September 2019.
The Naruto running fucking meme.
It started as a meme, turned into a real thing. No one actually stormed Area 51, but a bunch of people showed up outside and kind of turned it into a little alien nerd festival. But anyway, yeah, I'm sure that the boost in sightings was largely because of this and the attention that it drew to UFOs and the conspiracies surrounding Area 51. We can touch on Area 51 later, but for now, let me tell you about the kindling that sparked the wildfire of UFO sightings throughout the U.S., extending even to today, and that is Kenneth Arnold's sighting back in 1947. On June 24th, 1947, an amateur pilot named Kenneth Arnold was flying a small plane near Mount Rainier in Washington State when he saw something kind of strange. Directly to his left, about 20 to 25 miles north of him, and at the same altitude, a chain of 9 objects shot across the sky, glinting in the sun as they traveled. By comparing their size to that of a distant airplane, Arnold gauged that the objects to be about 45 to 50 feet wide. They flew between two mountains spaced 50 miles apart in just 1 minute 42 seconds, he observed, implying an astonishing speed of 1,700 miles per hour, or 3 times faster than any manned aircraft of the era. Fuck.
Damn.
However, as if controlled, the flying objects seemed to dip and swerve around obstacles in the terrain. When the objects faded into the distance, Arnold flew to Yakima, Washington, or Yakima Wash, I'm not sure, it's in my notes, weird, landed and immediately told the airport staff of the unidentified flying objects he had spotted. The next day, he was interviewed by reporters, and the story spread like wildfire across the nation. Now, this incident is what is widely accepted as the first UFO sighting among ufologists, and it seemingly kickstarted the nation into a fuck ton of UFO sightings from there on out. Now, Kenneth's sighting, to me, isn't really all that interesting, just, kind of vague details and stuff like that, the more I look into it. But without this particular incident, there probably wouldn't have been as much coverage on what is probably the most well-known UFO alien-based incident ever, and that is the events that occurred in Roswell, New Mexico. Chris?
Yeah, and so I actually looked this up once you told me about this, and you could be right. There's some conflicting information about when the Roswell sightings first occurred. All it really says is sometime between June and July, and your story happens right in that time frame. So it seems like these two stories happening right at the same time probably helped kickstart all of this. If you got this guy saying he saw some aliens, and then the whole thing that happened in Roswell, it's pretty likely that both of them contributed to this big, ordeal that Roswell turned out to be.
Yeah, the only reason I put Kenneth before Roswell was just because I visited some sites that I was uncomfortable in because of the amount of lunacy within them.
Yeah.
And it seems like that's the general consensus that is agreed upon within these, psycho circles. Not that I'm not a non-believer of UFOs, but with these particular incidences, I'm not very convinced. But yeah, the general consensus is that Kenneth's happened first.
Yeah, it seems likely, because, I think the one statement that I found was Roswell ended up happening in July, so... Yeah. But anyway, concerning Roswell, back in 1947, in Lincoln County, New Mexico, a rancher by the name of W.W. Mac Brazel found a wreckage of sorts scattered all across his property. Some of the wreckage consisted of rubber parts, tinfoil, thick paper, vibrators, nipple clamps, bazooka dildos, chips, dips, chains, whips.
Yeah, that sounds a lot like what I have in my car.
I'm obviously kidding about the last stuff, but
I didn't even know you added that. Right? I just looked at the fucking notes. I didn't know he added that.
but honestly, he found stuff that looked like rubber parts, tinfoil, but it was a lot of stuff that he had trouble identifying. And since he had trouble identifying this stuff, he decides to call up old Sheriff George Wilcox, who was actually in Roswell, to come take a look at it. And I think he did this actually because of the whole Kenneth Arnold sightings. Because when I was researching this, it did mention that Brazel had heard reports of UFO sightings near Roswell. And this is why he contacted George Wilcox from Roswell, even though Brazel is in Lincoln County. So, just throwing that out there, that might corroborate, the idea that Kenneth Arnold actually saw this stuff first.
Yeah.
But anyway, he asked Wilcox to come take a look at it. The sheriff, when he gets there, he doesn't know what the hell he's looking at either. So he ends up calling Colonel William Blanchard to come investigate it. And he doesn't really know what he's looking at either. So why is this all a big deal in the first place? Well, that's because there had already been a bunch of reports of flying saucer, like we talked about Kenneth Arnold, or flying disc being seen in the sky by numerous people just 75 miles south in Roswell. Now, we had someone who had some unidentifiable parts scattered around his property, and you put two and two together, and it looks like you got yourself a crashed spaceship, which is, of course, exactly what people thought. After Colonel Blanchard shows up at the scene, he had his troops from the Roswell Army Airfield come and gather up the materials and haul them away. All of this, of course, started a buzz and word got around. Well, the interesting thing here is that the RAF, the Roswell Army Airfield, actually released a statement about what they found, and this is interesting to me because this is what their statement says. The many rumors regarding the flying disc became a reality yesterday when the intelligence office of the 509th Bomb Group of the 8th Air Force Roswell Army Airfield was fortunate enough to gain possession of a disc through the cooperation of one of the local ranchers in the sheriff's office of Chavez County.
So, although it seems like the Army is basically straight up admitting that they found a fucking spaceship, it was exaggerated by an excited officer who issued a press release claiming to have found a flying disc, which is what the RAAF, Roswell Army Airfield, ended up corroborating in their statement Chris had brought up. And yes, this is all fucking published. You can look it up. They actually said this. The funniest part about it is that they, of course, later retracted their statement saying that the material covered was actually from a weather balloon that had crashed instead. They even went as far as to releasing photos of Major Marcel, who was leading the investigation, posing with weather balloon debris, to dispel mass hysteria and sell this idea to try to convince everyone that they hadn't just admitted they had found a fucking alien spacecraft.
Yeah. And I'm also going to post some of those photos of Major Marcel posing with the debris on our Facebook and all of our medias, just so that way you guys can take a look at it. And I kind of want to weigh in on this little subject here for a minute, just because it fascinates me with how they have this written statement, and then later it gets retracted, and they're saying, like, no, it was, the weather balloon. Like I said, I have some picture of Major Marcel with the debris, and I don't know, it's just kind of sketchy because it's just weird how they just, they sit there and say that they found a spaceship, and then they change it and they're like, no, it's a weather balloon, JK. I don't buy that, dude. It's like multiple reports say that Rancher Brazel found a disc, like a full-on saucer. The most common reports that I came across say he found debris, but nothing debunks those other reports where it says he found a full-on saucer. And then you pair that with the fact that the Army statement specifically states that they found a saucer, it seems to add some truth to the reports that Brazel found a disc and not debris. But I don't know, I'm at a crossroads too, because the pictures with Major Marcel, it looks like tinfoil sheets and all that stuff, like all the stuff that they said it was, but it all looks so purposefully like it's supposed to look like a weather balloon wreckage. But I don't know, just why the conflicting information? Why would they say they found a saucer and then later change their story?
Well, what happened was the U.S. Army Air Forces were working on something called Project Mogul, sometimes referred to as Operation Mogul. And it was a top-secret project involving microphones flown on high-altitude balloons, whose primary purpose was long-distance detection of sound waves generated by Soviet atomic bomb tests. The project was carried out from 1947 until early 1949. It was a classified portion of an unclassified project by atmospheric researchers at New York University. The project was moderately successful, but was very expensive and was superseded by a network of seismic detectors and air sampling for fallout, which were cheaper, more reliable, and easier to deploy and operate. Of course, the U.S. Army Air Forces didn't want the details of their project to leak by releasing a truthful statement to the general public. However, with the hysteria caused from the confirmation of a flying disc, the U.S. Army Air Force caved and released some of the truth. A significant amount of time later, it was totally declassified.
Oh, that's interesting. And, yeah, it's funny, too, because the whole weather balloon story actually worked. Public chatter about it pretty much died off until the 80s when some conspiracy theorists sort of brought attention back to it again. And it's probably just because of how, from the surface, this whole ordeal seems pretty shady. And honestly, it is really easy to see where conspiracy theorists could draw suspicion from on this incident, because just some very, very basic facts about it, it seems very much like some sort of cover-up, right?
Yeah.
Well, they went as far as to theorize that not only was a spacecraft recovered, but that extraterrestrial occupants had also been recovered. And this was kind of due to some testimonials that these conspiracy theorists had taken from supposed eyewitnesses. But pretty much by the end, or the mid to late 80s, the vast majority of people believed that the government had done some sort of cover-up on the whole Roswell incident. But luckily, all of this newfound buzz about the Roswell thing kind of sparked Congress and the General Accounting Office to send an inquiry to the United States Secretary of the Air Force to launch an internal investigation into the matter. They ended up coming up with 2 reports. One was released in 1994 and basically detailed how the debris that was found from Project Mogul, like Sean had mentioned, just basically, talked about that, that the debris that they found was from that project, nothing else. The second report came out 3 years later in 1997 and detailed about how people who thought they saw military personnel recovering alien bodies were simply confusing memories with them recovering crash dummies from another experiment called Operation High Dive. And all I got from Operation High Dive, it was just another high altitude test, but this one had dummies with parachutes. So a lot of these people were just seeing, them recovering the dummies and mixing it up in their brain, thinking they remembered seeing officers collecting alien bodies. Which I could see that, honestly, I could see that. With these reports released, most people were sated and accepted those answers, but there's still many out there who don't buy it. Honestly, after looking up everything on this, I'm kind of one of them. All this information seems like excuses that were constructed specifically to this incident, I don't know, especially, like I said, I can see where the dummy thing is coming from, but it seems like such a convenient excuse, and especially making it based off of false memories. I don't know, why are you conducting all these experiments at the same time, too? Why is this happening when that other high altitude test is happening? Why wouldn't they be happening at different times? It all just sounds too convenient now. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, the beginning of the Cold War was just stirring up that same exact year, so nothing makes a government more experimental and secretive than a seemingly imminent nuclear holocaust. And if you know your history, the Cold War was essentially a 44-year-long dick measuring contest between the United States and the Soviet Union, which kind of just made a huge boom in our military-industrial complex, i.e. the U.S. going in on a lot more super-duper secret projects. I mean, I'm an American. I know we physically cannot shut the fuck up, especially about our own government.
Yeah.
So I don't really blame the U.S. government at the time for keeping so many things under such tight wraps, because otherwise the Soviet Union would have just motherfucked us into oblivion, simply just because the general public would have leaked classified information if they weren't.
Yeah.
Regardless, it's interesting that the government ended up looking into UFOs because of the popularity among the U.S. population, so maybe they did have a little bit of, some belief in that as well. The project was established in 1948 by Air Force General Nathan Farragut. Motherfuck this name, dude. General Nathan Farragut Twining, head of Air Technical Service Command, was initially named Project Saucer. The goal of the project was to collect, evaluate, and distribute within the government all information relating to UFO sightings on the premise that they might represent a national security concern. At first, the project hypothesized the sightings that might be Soviet secret weapons. However, the project science final report, published in early 1949, stated that while some UFOs appeared to represent actual aircraft, there was not enough data to determine their origin. Almost all cases were explained by ordinary causes, but the report recommended a continuation of investigation of all sightings. Project Sign was first described in the 1956 book, The Report on Unidentified Flying Objects, by retired Air Force Captain Edward J. Ruppelt. In this book, he also claimed that Sign had produced an estimate of the situation which endorsed an interplanetary explanation for UFOs. But General Hoyt Vandenberg, Chief of Staff of the Air Force, shut down Project Sign for lack of proof. No copy of this document or any other corroboration of Ruppelt's claims has been produced. And Popular Mechanics, a magazine, called the report probably more mythological than real. Project Sign was followed by Project Grudge after a conclusion was reached that evaluations of UFOs were a necessity of military intelligence in a post-war climate. Like Project Sign, Grudge thought that the vast bulk of UFO reports could be explained as misidentified clouds, stars, sundogs, conventional aircraft, or the like of misunderstood earthly technology.
What the hell is a sundog?
However, unlike Sign, which thought some UFOs might have an extraordinary answer, Grudge's personnel thought that the remaining minority of reports could be explained away as normal phenomena. Grudge began a public relations campaign to explain their conclusions to the general public. According to same Captain Edward J. Ruppelt, by the end of 1951, several high-ranking, very influential USAF generals were so fucking dissatisfied with the state of the Air Force UFO investigations that they dismantled Project Grudge and replaced it with Project Blue Book in March 1952. One of them was General Charles B. Cable. Another important change came when General William Garland joined Cable's staff. Garland thought that the UFO question deserved serious scrutiny because he had witnessed a UFO.
Interesting.
Which is pretty odd to know that an actual general had, seen a real fucking UFO or allegedly seen a UFO.
Yeah, we come across a lot of this stuff too, actually, as I was researching. Like a lot of official type people, and there's even one that I'll get to later on in one of our other subjects, but just a lot of official people corroborating stories of witnesses and stuff like that. It's just weird.
Yeah. So this new name, Project Blue Book, was selected to refer the blue booklets used for testing at some colleges and universities. The name was inspired, said Ruppelt, by the close attention that high-ranking officers were given to the new project. It felt as if the study of UFOs were as important as a college final exam. Blue Book was also upgraded in status from Project Grudge with the creation of the Aerial Phenomenon Branch. Ruppelt was the first head of the project. He was an experienced airman, having been decorated for his efforts with the Army Air Corps during World War II, and having afterward earned an aeronautics degree. He officially coined the term unidentified flying objects, so UFOs as we know them today were because of him. To replace the many terms flying saucer, flying disc, and so on, the military had previously used. Ruppelt thought that unidentified flying object was a more neutral and accurate term. Also gets the government out of a lot of fucking tight holes. Let's be honest. Ruppelt resigned from the Air Force some years later and wrote a book, The Report on Unidentified Flying Objects, which described the study of UFOs by United States Air Force from 1947 to 1955. American scientist Michael D. Swords wrote that Ruppelt would lead the last genuine effort to analyze UFOs. Project Blue Book was later dismantled in December 1969 because further funding could not be justified on either the grounds of national security or in the interest of science.
I just want to say how cool it is that guy's name is Michael D. Swords.
Yeah. That's a perfect fucking name.
That's a fucking tight-ass name. Can you imagine if your name was Michael D. Swords?
And all he is in history for is sucking the dick of Edward J. Ruppelt. That's a fucking shame.
Yeah, such a waste of a name. Man, he's an American scientist. Nobody cares if you're a scientist with the name Swords. He should have been an MMA fighter. You know how fucking cool it would be if they announced it, Michael D. Swords, and he comes out and he's just fucking like got 2 swords tattooed on his biceps. And he's just flexing. That'd be fucking sick. Sorry.
What if he was like Tekashi 6ix9ine and just had swords like just swords face. Tattooed all over his body? There was like a circle of swords around his nipples and 2 swords going into his belly button.
And they're all different swords, like not the same, just standard sword. Like one's a scimitar and one's a, fucking Japanese tanto and, just
fucking scabbard. Or no, a scabbard's a sword holder, my bad.
Come on. He puts that on his butt. So that way other dudes named Michael D. Swords can shove their sword into the scabbard.
Just so you know, guys, we're just being satirical. I think bromance jokes and homosexual jokes are just amazing, and especially in terms of having a scabbard tattooed on your asshole.
Yeah, let me just put this out there because we know you have to. We side with the homosexual, thing. We're not poking fun at it to, degrade anybody. Just like think it's funny, okay? Just say it because it's 2020. But all right. Anyway, aside from sword dicks going into butt scabbards, the next thing along the line of UFOs that I want to talk about is a hometown story, and we're gonna have a couple of those. And that's the Phoenix Lights. Some of you probably know about this. But if you're like me, and I kind of hate to admit this, especially since it's a hometown story, but I didn't really know much about it. I had to research like a lot more about it than I'd like to admit. I knew like pretty much the gist of the story, but that was really about it. And I didn't know that it's actually one of the most famous UFO incidents in history, like actually bigger than Roswell. Like I guess this is considered like the single most, famous UFO incident. I don't know if you happen to know anything about the the Phoenix Lights, but I surely didn't.
Yeah, I didn't really know much about it. I wouldn't say it was the most popular. I think generally most people can agree that Roswell is probably the most popular.
That's what I thought, but looking it up, everybody says it's the most famous one. I honestly thought Roswell would have been. And I still kind of feel like, I don't know, saying that this one, Phoenix Lights is kind of like opinionated, but...
Yeah, it just seems like it's opinionated. Like, I don't know why people would think, because this is less... I mean, they're both pretty non-eventful when you really get down to it, but... Yeah, I guess this is a little bit more eventful. It's actual lights in the sky, so...
Yeah.
But honestly, you can take the lead on this one because I didn't do jack shit for research on the Phoenix Lights.
Oh. All right, in case you didn't know... Oh, excuse me. That login is coming up. The Phoenix Lights were a series of UFOs spotted over Arizona, Nevada, and the Mexican state of Sonora on March 13th, 1997. The reason it's referred to as the Phoenix Lights, or the Lights over Phoenix if you're a fucking Neanderthal and you have to sound shit out because your fucking mind's slow, it's because the most widely noted event occurred over my hometown of Phoenix, Arizona, where a couple of stationary lights hovered in the sky in a triangular formation. But let's go ahead and start from the beginning and get all the facticals in order here. At 8:16 p.m., the National UFO Reporting Center got their first call about the lights from a retired police officer living in Paulden, Arizona, which is, I guess, 2 hours north of Phoenix. I've never fucking heard of the place. He claimed to have seen some reddish lights in the sky that were flying in a V formation. Again, a triangular formation.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he wasn't the only one to see these lights because hundreds of calls started pouring in. And after more and more people started to see these lights, and it was actually he may have been the first one to call in this report to the National UFO Reporting Center, but there was stuff that said there was reports as early as 7 o'clock. But anyway, this is what I like about this one because it's not just the word of like one guy like it was with the Roswell thing, where it's just one rancher and then a bunch of military people. This time it's like just tons of people, and there's videos and stuff you guys can look up to, pictures, all that sort of stuff. Like I'll probably post some to our social medias, but anyway, more reports rolled in, and the lights themselves were seen from very, very far away. Most of the sightings came in from people in Phoenix who saw the same V formation. Most reports claims that it was about 5 lights, but there was a lot of conflicting information there. Some people said as much as 9. But anyway, they're all reddish in color, and they are all in some sort of V or triangular shape. All in all, it was around 700 reports from witnesses of these lights, and all were ranging from not just, common people like us, but also pilots, police officers, and even, funny enough, some military officers called this stuff in. And that's reassuring too, because it wasn't just us. It's, some more, I would say, trustworthy, but now is kind of a weird political climate to say that police officers are trustworthy. But but you got those kind of people reporting this event too, so people who are supposed to be a little more truthful. And it's also kind of contradictory to their explanation of what the lights were, but we'll get to that in a second. For the sake of keeping this interesting, I'm going to go ahead and just glaze over some of the less significant stuff, because there's a lot of stuff that goes into this story, but it all, like we were talking about earlier, it gets a little bit boring if you try to nitpick a lot of this stuff. So just going to get the main point across, that a lot of people saw lights attached to some sort of craft. And, they didn't just see lights. That's what I initially thought was it was just lights, but there was actually a craft that people saw that the lights were attached to, and that's the interesting part of this. But it even goes far as governors saying that they saw this craft, and like I said, pilots and police officers and military personnel, stuff like that. The funny thing here, though, is that this whole event doesn't even become a big deal until a couple of months later, when USA Today, the paper, publishes an article about it, just basically asking all the right questions. I wasn't able to dig up this article. There's a lot of stuff too that I found in my research that I just couldn't dig up stuff on. So give or take some of this stuff with a grain of salt. But that's not to say that the questions weren't being asked, because during this time, a then councilwoman, Frances Barwood, was actually bold enough to ask questions about this during a city council meeting. And she was basically just asking whether or not they were going to look into the lights. And strangely enough, she was ignored during the council meeting. And then after the council meeting, she was approached by a city manager who reportedly told her, "You shouldn't have asked that question."
The fuck?
Yeah, and that's so fucking creepy. I don't know, if I were asking about alien stuff in a very specific meeting like that, and some guy came up and told me you shouldn't have asked that question, I would just be running out of that fucking building no tomorrow. Fuck that, dude.
Yeah, seriously, because when I looked into it, there was nothing but fucking dead ends. And granted, I didn't have a lot of time to look into this particular incident, but it still holds my point. There's just some things the general public should know when it comes to experimental aircraft, if that is the case in this scenario, and things that other countries could learn due to leaks and the public when it comes to this specific incident, but there's not much sense to be made out of a visual such as that. And a significant amount of people corroborating the same fucking sighting and expecting it to be kept secret, that seems unlikely. So maybe this was out of the government's control. With that particular incident with someone walking up to her, I don't... a city manager, nonetheless. Is that what it was?
Yeah,
a city manager. Yeah, so, there's a couple people that might have known what was going on, and just their job, or they got tipped off to be like, hey, whenever this happens, don't fucking tell anyone. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's what I think too. They came up to certain people and told them, hey, if anybody asks about this shit, you keep your fucking mouth shut. And that's why he comes up and is like, you shouldn't have asked that question, dude. I want to know what he looked like when he was saying that too. I want to know under what context.
Yeah, because I don't see him being intimidating and saying this. I think he was more being like, hey, you really need to be shut the fuck up.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering, is if it was a scared, you shouldn't have asked that question, or if it was you shouldn't have asked that fucking question.
Yeah.
But anyway, Frances Barwood was wholly ignored and actually mocked after she asked this question. And this is fucked up. A cartoon of her with a light switch for a face and a badge on her jacket saying "I love UFOs" was published by the Arizona Republic, which is another major newspaper that still runs today. And apparently the mayor's office went as far as putting signs on her pictures at City Hall, and even handed out business cards with her name on it that said, "Speak into the tinfoil, I will hear you." Like, they literally crucified her for asking about this, which I think is just, a bit much, honestly. She was asking a very valid question to a situation that I think many would have appreciated an answer to. But anyway, luckily, the USA Today article brought attention back to the Phoenix Lights, and getting answers finally gained some traction. To keep a long story short, the eventual explanation for the lights was that they were flares from a high-altitude jet test. And again, here we are with the whole high-altitude test bullshit. As you might be able to guess, this explanation was full of holes. The first hole being that the time they claimed the test was being conducted didn't line up with when the lights were first seen. Also, there's the fact that the airbase from which the exercise was supposedly coming from, which was the Tucson Davis Monthan Air Force Base, they originally claimed that they had no aircraft in the sky during this time. So, big fucking bullshit, my guy. Just from the start of this explanation, it's not adding up. But it goes even further than that. Like I said before, the timing of when they said that a jet had dropped flares and the timing of when people started seeing the lights didn't add up. They claimed that the first flare drop occurred around 10 p.m. Now, remember, the first phone call about the lights came in at 8:16, almost 2 hours before the supposed airdrop. And not only that, but like I said before too, calls were coming in as early as 7. That's just the first one that the UFO Reporting Center has was at 8. That's still 2 whole hours. Another tidbit of info that I came across even said that air traffic controllers couldn't detect the lights on these radars, even though they could physically see the lights themselves. And I found that pretty interesting. But obviously a lot of other people had trouble accepting this explanation that they gave too, that this was just some flare drop. And this is funny too. 3 years after the initial incident, the National Guard did a flare drop to try and recreate the event. And spectators were treated to a nice slice of I don't buy this bullshit pie when the exercise turned out nothing like the lights they had seen 3 years prior. It's like I said, this is funny to me. The National Guard sets out to debunk conspiracy theorists and actually end up giving them more traction because the flare drop they did looked nothing like the lights they saw. Like, that's fucking hilarious.
Mission failed. We'll get them next time.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. That's fucking hilarious to me. Like, they try to, and I even saw some video footage of it too. It doesn't look anything like it.
Yeah, because weren't the lights like? I remember seeing like maybe a clip of footage back in the day, but they were sustained for a long fucking time. Yeah, and flares don't last that long.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Is if you've ever seen a flare or even a batch of flares, it kind of look like fireworks. So just imagine fireworks as much as 5 little fireworks flying in the sky at the same exact time, like just flying even level with each other in a V formation. That is not going to fucking happen unless it's very, very, very much on purpose. And even then, we have these National Guards guys who try to replicate that, and they fail like incredibly hard. So yeah, obviously, you can say what you want about this story, but there's no fucking way it was flares. But yeah, there's lots of other tiny little details to this story, but the gist of it is what we've talked about. And honestly, like I tried to keep it with the most interesting parts. But yeah, there was just a lot more involved with this than what I originally thought in our research. Like, I never really knew about all the weird inclusive details like that. But yeah, this and like the Roswell incident are very similar. And one more thing I wanted to point out too is like how I was saying, we were talking earlier about how some like official people were saying they saw this. There was this governor, I can't remember his name. It's like Fife Sigmington or something like that. Mm-hmm. He originally came out, and there's this video of him that you can find too, of him coming out and saying like, oh, we found the people responsible for the Phoenix lights. And he's like, why don't you go ahead and bring out the people responsible? And he turns to his left, and out walks this guy dressed up in a gigantic UFO or alien outfit. And obviously, it's supposed to be mocking the whole situation. But the funny thing about this is later on, he ends up giving this statement publicly saying, oh no, I saw the spacecraft too. Yeah, there was, a couple lights, and it was a craft. I saw it. So that's just the weirdest shit to me. You have a guy who's like on TV trying to make a joke of it, and then later on saying like, "No, I saw it." Yeah, like what?
Then what the fuck is even your point whenever you try to...
That's what I mean. Is like, see, we're going back to that City Hall guy. You know, it seems like somebody's twisting arms out there. Somebody out there is trying to keep a lid on things. And I don't know. With this one...
I guess in that incident, like, I might do the same thing. Because I'm very, you know, you're the same way. I'm very, you know, humorous about almost fucking everything. So even if something like paranormal or, you know, UFO-esque I end up seeing, I'd probably end up making a joke about it, like making fun of myself. Because that's just what I do. And, you know, especially when you're in that kind of position, you know, you're higher up in society, you might want to make fun of it a little bit, but to later corroborate with all the other sightings being like, yeah, I did see it, but, you know, whatever. Like, okay, well, you still just said you fucking saw it, man.
Yeah.
Like,
I know that
don't have an explanation other than making fun of it.
Yeah, that one, it's like, it gives some credit to that Frances Barwood chick, because, I mean, and that's the funny thing, too, is if you look her up, she's I don't think she's a city councilwoman anymore, but she's still looking into UFO stuff, and she actually appeared in a couple of movies and, like, you know, helped write some articles about this stuff, because, I mean, obviously, if somebody came up to her and told her she shouldn't ask that, and then she was mocked after this, it's pretty easy to start thinking that maybe this was covered up. Yeah. And, you know, in my opinion, too, with the Roswell thing and this story, they kind of seem like cover-ups. Like, I'm 100% convinced that we were at least not told the whole truth on these. So, on the subject of UFOs, my verdict is that we have definitely seen foreign objects flying in the sky. Like, there's no denying that. Now, whether or not they're from another world, I can't say. My 2 cents are that they're actually government experiments that were using technology and material not known to the public. And, I mean, corroborating that is the Project Mogul, Operation High Dive, stuff like that. You know, they're all experimenting with these high-altitude tests, and there could be no other thing than, you know, they're trying to create something. So I don't think that these crafts were piloted by aliens, at least not in these two incidences. Like I said, that's at least for these modern sightings, but I don't know. Like, what's your verdict on this?
My 2 cents is, honestly, I'm hoping for aliens. I'm not gonna lie, but the only argument for that is what I said before. The government wasn't in control of the situation, and that's why people saw the lights. Or the government might have not been in control of the situation. But with my understanding of how Roswell went, people saw that, and, you know, Project Mogul, it was unintentional, but people saw it regardless. And if I were to bet in another 20 to 30 years, it'll be declassified as a fleet of prototype aircraft or a singular aircraft. But the newest thing that gets me is the Pentagon kind of just confirmed some actual unexplained UFO sightings, so This is why I'm a little bit leery. So, whereas I think the Phoenix Lights incident might have just been a new aircraft test, I don't think that this was. And let me explain that a little bit. In April of this year being 2020 for any future listeners out there, CNN released an article that the Pentagon confirmed sightings of, quote, unidentified aerial phenomena, corroborating leaked videos from 2017 and 2018. According to the New York Times, a clip from 2004 was filmed by 2 Navy fighter pilots and shows a round object hovering above the water, about 100 miles, 160 kilometers, out into the Pacific Ocean. 2 other videos filmed in 2015 shows objects moving through the air, one of which is spinning. I don't know if you've seen this video, but dude, it's actually kind of fucking crazy.
I have watched him. It's been a while, but I did watch him.
In one, a pilot is even heard saying, "Look at that thing, dude! It's fucking rotating, bro." No, he just says, "Look at that thing,
ever, dude."
Do a fucking barrel roll, my dude. No, he just says, "Look at that thing, dude! It's rotating." That's his direct quote. I'm sorry. In its statement, the Pentagon said, after a thorough review, the department has determined that the authorized release of these unclassified videos does not reveal any sensitive capabilities or systems. Basically meaning that they didn't fucking do this.
Yeah.
and does not impinge on any subsequent investigations of military airspace incursions by unidentified aerial phenomena, which means no other country fucking did this.
Yeah.
The Department of Defense released the videos in order to clear up any misconceptions by the public on whether or not the footage had been that has been circulating was real, or had been circulating was real, or whether or not there is more to the videos. The aerial phenomena observed in the videos remain characterized as, quote, unidentified. The Navy videos were first released between December 2017 and March 2018 by To the Stars Academy and Arts and Sciences, a company co-founded by former Blink-182 musician. Yep, fucking Tom DeLonge.
Motherfucking Tom DeLonge.
Dude, who saw that coming? No fucking way, dude. Okay, so Blink-182 became a band. I don't have notes for this, so I'm just guessing. Blink-182 became a band fucking what, early 2000s, maybe the 90s?
Yeah, it's probably the 90s, maybe.
And they make incredibly mediocre music. The fucking lead of Blink-182 helped find actual fucking footage of unidentified aerial phenomenon, otherwise known as UFOs. No bullshit.
That is fucking the biggest career move for him.
Dude. Anyway, that's fucking nuts. Anyway, that's Tom DeLonge, sorry, that says it studies information about unidentified aerial phenomena. In 2017, one of the pilots who saw one of the unidentified flying objects in 2004 told CNN that it moved in ways he could not explain. As I got close to it, it rapidly accelerated to the north and disappeared in less than 2 seconds.
South.
2 seconds, said retired U.S. Motherfucker, I'm so drunk. Quote, as I got close to it, it rapidly accelerated to the south and disappeared in less than 2 seconds, said retired U.S. Navy pilot David Fravor. Quote, this was extremely abrupt, like a ping pong ball. Bouncing off of walls, it would hit and go the other way. The Pentagon had previously studied recordings of aerial phenomenon with unknown objects as part of a since-shuttered classified program that was launched at the behest of former Senator Harry Reid of Nevada. The program was launched in 2007 and ended in 2012, according to the Pentagon, because they had assessed that there were higher priorities that needed funding. So, basically, what happened was this did get leaked, but it kind of seems like it's still not very important to the government. And honestly, I don't really blame them in this term. It's exciting to know that there are, in fact, unidentified flying objects.
Yeah.
But that term in itself doesn't necessarily mean that it's aliens. You know what I mean?
That's the thing.
So
they're not confirmed. Like, a lot of people, when this came out, they obviously were just like, yeah, see, this is proof of aliens, but it's not. It's not proof of aliens. It's just proof that our government didn't know what this was. And obviously enough to go as far as saying that they didn't think that it was from some other country or something. So, I mean...
Yeah, and that doesn't even, it could be from another country. It could be from just another fucking branch of the military working on experimental craft. That doesn't mean another branch of the military is going to know about that same craft.
Yeah.
This does, however, excite me regardless, just because it's the closest we're going to get to our government admitting that there's aliens.
Yeah. I am going to try to put these videos up on our social media too, so you can check them out and just let us know what you think about them. Because, I mean, they are pretty trippy. Just also, like, how official they look too is pretty crazy. Because obviously it's video from, the pilots or whatever who were videoing it. So it's a little hard to make out what some stuff is. But if you know what you're looking at, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I also want to say that it's so weird, like you were saying, that fucking Tom DeLonge was the one who came out with this stuff, and he has his own UFO
If there's anything to take away from this podcast, just know that Tom DeLonge fucking actually fucked up the government on this in this arena.
Yeah, I gotta give it to him, man. Like, kudos to him, because that's the funny thing too, is I had seen these videos, but I'd seen them before they were released this year. I saw him sometime last year, and this was when I learned that he had his own UFO organization, all that stuff. But yeah, he had released them. I saw him on his website and stuff. Oh, excuse me. And yeah, it's just like good for him for doing this. Like, that's a pretty big achievement, honestly, because I think this might be the only confirmed stuff pertaining to UFOs, like, at least from an official standpoint, from like the government saying, like, yeah, we don't know what the fuck it is. Like, there's plenty of other videos out there where you could spitball and say, like, oh, we don't know what this is, but this is like, we have official stuff saying, like, NASA, you know, like, going, we don't know what this is. Government saying we don't know what this is. So good for him for being at least the first that I know of for doing that. And also giving some headway on just, you know, the existence of aliens in general.
Yeah, so cheers to Tom DeLonge.
Yeah, cheers. Did a shot of Jameson for that one.
Oh, that was a bad idea. I'm sorry. By the way, guys, we didn't know that it is very hard to read while you're drinking.
Yeah, I know. It's getting a little tough to read my notes.
But luckily, we're heading to the point where we're going to start improvising. So, Chris, if you could take it away.
Yeah. So, like, I guess this kind of counts because it counts a little bit towards, like, the UFO stuff. The last, like, big subject that I want to talk about is the Travis Walton UFO incident. I'm going to change that and say it's the Travis Walton Abduction incident. And a lot of people will know this because of the movie that popularized it, Fire in the Sky. It's probably one of the biggest abduction stories, you know, anybody can think of.
Well, true story. I mean...
Yeah, air quotes on that one, because a lot of this stuff that I looked into honestly said that, you know, it's like pretty much, it's got to be a hoax, because there was just a lot of holes in his story. But
he was like...
For the time,
it
seemed likely.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
This happened.
It seemed like he was just the original balloon boy, though.
Yeah, kind of.
All right, sorry, go ahead.
But yeah, this happened back in 1975 on November 5th out of Snowflake, Arizona. So this is another hometown story. And like I said, it's most likely a hoax, so don't fucking buy into it or anything. Basically, what he ended up saying was he was riding in a truck with his coworkers. I'm assuming after work, because this happened at nighttime, if I remember correctly. They encountered some sort of flying saucer hovering over the ground like 110 feet away, which I don't know how he just came up with that number or if he fucking measured it. I'm assuming he's just spitballing. But he said it was making some sort of high-pitched noise, and that was kind of what got their attention to it. And this is what the bullshit part of it for me is that Travis Walton claims that he left the truck and approached the object, and then a beam of light suddenly appeared and, like, knocked him unconscious. And the other coworkers that he was with were just so frightened and drove away without him. I don't know, that's the part for me where it starts to already have some holes to it. Because for one, if you saw a flying saucer, there's no fucking way your first instinct is going to be to get out and go towards it. And then two, if that did happen, you're with 6 other people, I'm going to go ahead and say that a pretty good chance of 1 out of 6 that somebody's not going to fucking leave without you.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you on that. Honestly, like, especially just because aliens were kind of more of a fascination. I mean, this isn't just me bullshitting, but I do kind of think, like, back in the day, it wasn't even necessarily fear. I think, like, how I see it in, like, the 40s and 50s is when everyone saw it as, you know, being fucking terrifying.
Yeah.
But 60s and 70s, I think the majority of people would actually be like, no, man, they're just fucking here to vibe, bro. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, honestly, if you go back to what we were talking about with the, what was it, Roswell? This time, you know, during the 70s and 80s was when the whole UFO thing started to kick back up. So I think, you know, he might have been one of those people who was still not satisfied with the answers he got about Roswell.
Not even that. I mean, honestly, if I you know just as well as I do that there are just some people who can't fucking stand not to be in the limelight.
Yeah.
And in some aspects, I get it, but you kind of have to grow out of that after a while, especially when you're making bullshit up. And not to say he's making bullshit up, because there's no real way to ever claim that he's wrong, which is the fucking brilliance if this is a hoax.
Yeah,
there's no way to prove that he's wrong, and there's also no way to prove that he's right. So, saying that you've been abducted is one of the best ways to get fucking coverage, especially back in the 70s, especially when, there's fucking partiers all the fucking time, parties, all the time. And it's just one of those things that, I don't know how the scene was back in Snowflake, Arizona in fucking 1975, but it does kind of seem like he was just doing it for the attention and maybe to, find any fucking way to make some side hustle money, which, by the way, he ended up fucking doing. Travis Walton made a shit ton of money.
He fucking banked hard on this stuff. But there's more to the story. He says that, he got knocked out by the UFO or whatever. But the part that got everybody was he goes on to claim that he ended up waking up in a hospital-like room, and there was these 3 bald, fleshy creatures. And he also goes on to claim that he fought with them until they, a human wearing some sort of helmet took Walton to another room, which I don't know why he went from fighting to just suddenly being led. It might have been some sort of misdirection thing that they did on him. But he blacked out when 3 other humans put some sort of clear plastic-like mask over his face. And he claims he doesn't remember anything else after that. And that he just found himself walking along the highway with the, the UFO flying away above him. So yeah, and I will point out that in his defense, during the time at least, he did pass polygraph tests. So there was that. He did have that going for him. The other 6 guys that he was with, the other 6 coworkers, did corroborate some of his story. But that's the thing here too, is that there was this other UFO researcher named Philip J. Klass, who just, after hearing all this stuff was just like not buying it. Kind of like me, probably like, if I just heard this story right now, I'd be like, fuck you, you're full of shit.
Oh, actually, I did do research on this. Yeah, he ended up saying that Klass said that the polygraph tests were actually poorly administered.
Yeah.
Quotes. And then they ended up doing like other tests because on the previous one, he was doing polygraph countermeasures. That being Travis Walton was doing countermeasures. So he was like holding his breath and doing other techniques to try to pass the polygraph.
Yeah, I'm not trying to tell you how to pass a polygraph test, but if you do, hold your fucking breath. Like, that's how you pass one. It's all about heartbeat detection and fluctuation in breath, stuff like that. So if you do, because I looked into that stuff just because of this, because I wanted to see how he could fake it, but that's how he did it. He just held his breath, shit like that. So it's just all about like controlling your temper and your adrenaline and shit like that, because that's what it measures for.
Which in this current climate, I think I might want to mention that that's how a lot of cops pass their polygraph test.
Yeah, how a lot of gross, white, racist white cops pass their polygraph test. And I could go into that more, but I don't want to.
I don't want to.
Save that for something else.
I'm just saying it's super fucking easy to pass polygraph tests. That's all we have to say.
Yeah, and funny enough too, this Philip J. Klass actually got one of the people who administered the polygraph test to say that they were tampered with. I came across that too. I didn't write it down in my notes, but I remember that now that we're talking about it. And that was kind of why he is saying that it's got to be a hoax, because there were so many discrepancies, and he went into like interviewing some of the other coworkers, and their side of the story doesn't line up with his. So like, even though they corroborated some parts of Walton's story, most of it didn't add up. And yeah, like, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure if you went into this more, it's probably more obvious, like it is to Philip J. Klass, than to normal people hearing this story. But for the most part, it does sound like this one didn't really happen. And I would honestly think, ever since like just the movies and stuff came out, like that's just to sell the idea more. Like, I honestly feel like Travis Walton just wanted to get money, and he just wanted to sell this idea that this happened to him so he could get money.
Yeah, because what a lot of people might just say, like, being like, oh, well, how would you know that he wanted to make money off of this? It's like, okay, well, if he got caught in a lie, there's nothing really left to fucking lose.
Yeah.
Honestly, if you're that fucking desperate to make up some bullshit about getting fucking abducted, that means you don't really give a fuck about what other people's opinions are of you.
Yeah.
And he honestly might have already been, a major liar, what's the word? Pathological liar.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't know what he was like, so he could have been like that before. He could have been making up shit all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, and I'll admit it, just because I've grown as a person, that whenever I was a kid, I would lie about the dumbest shit. I remember in 3rd grade, I had a fucking friend named Joseph Mata that dude, I swear to God, this is a true story. I told him that I owned a plane.
In 3rd grade?
Yeah, in 3rd grade, I told him that I owned a plane and that I had a girlfriend and we would fly in it all the time over the weekend. Like, where the fuck would I have been going over the weekend that I had to fly so often?
DiCaprio in 3rd grade.
I know, like, like, I don't know why you feel it necessary to lie, but, I get that in aspect of, like, trying to seem cooler amongst friends, but I also get that even more so if you don't really have anything left to lose. You work in a fucking dead-end job or whatever the fuck, and you make them some bullshit that you can write a book about and you happen to get a fuck ton of money for. Mm-hmm. Like, it doesn't really matter at that point. So do I think his abduction really happened? No, I don't.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't buy it. Just along the lines of abductions, like, and that's my thing too, is like, I don't really believe that aliens would abduct us in the first place. Like, why would they abduct us if they were going to? Like, I know there's the whole they want to learn about us and stuff like that, but if you put it into perspective of intelligence, you got to imagine they have the ability to travel from wherever the fuck they come from to here. And we obviously know that's nowhere within our solar system because we've observed every other planet here. So if they're able to travel from with outside of our solar system and come here, I think that their intelligence goes beyond needing to abduct us, especially at random. Like, why would they abduct just some blue-collar worker, Travis Walton, for research purposes? That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Like, I honestly think if they were going to abduct people for research purposes, it would be very specific people, and I don't really think that it would be done in such a way that anybody could remember it. Because, like I said, again, we're talking about very intelligent people if they're able to travel to another planet and abduct people in a flying spaceship, no less. So really, just the idea in general of abductions doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But if they were to happen, I don't think that they would happen to random people. I don't think that they would happen at random. I don't even think that they would happen to anybody outside of, like, a very, very, very specific people.
Yeah, because especially if they do have that advanced of technology, you might want to think about the fact that they obviously can surveil us pretty fucking well. I mean, we figured out X-rays. We're not fucking dumb. We're pretty advanced. We're a pretty advanced society. I'm pretty sure they know how to fucking see through walls, all right?
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure that no alien is impressed with me jacking off in my bathroom and being like, you know what? I want to abduct him because I want to know how the fuck he works.
I want to know why he's jerking off in the bathroom at 3 a.m. after watching, Paw Patrol videos.
Holy fuck. The accuracy of that statement.
What brought him from watching Paw Patrol to suddenly thinking about busty big titty GFs? But no, that's what I mean, though. Like, why would they just abduct people at random? There's no fucking reason for it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe back in the day, but we've been such a fucking civil... Like, we've had plenty of versions of civilized society. We haven't evolved too much since, ancient Egyptians. So, I mean, if they were to abduct us, they could have done it back then. There's no way to fucking actually document that. And, maybe one person here or there, but with the amount of abduction and UFO claims, there's no fucking way that is an actual true event happening even today. Like, people still fucking claim abduction today.
Yeah.
And it's just so ludicrous. Fuck.
But see, my thing is, too, you hear about it less. Because the climate for UFOs is significantly less. Like I said, last year, the whole UFO reporting center caught this big wave of, an insurgence of reports. And, we had that whole big meme event that was sweeping fucking news feeds and stuff like that. I mean, CNN, fucking Fox was covering it. All these places were covering it, and all of a sudden we had this resurgence of UFO stuff. So I think it's the same lines here. We don't hear about it as much right now because there's nothing going on with aliens. So, I mean, for me, if you put that kind of mindset with what happened here with, like, Travis Walton, like I said, from the Roswell incident to basically the late 80s, the climate for UFOs was huge. Like, everybody was into this shit. I mean, they took the poll back in the 80s to see how many people believed in UFOs, and it was like 90% of the population believed in UFOs at the time. So, yeah, I don't know. I feel like that has to do with a lot of this stuff, too. Like, a lot of people just kind of want to believe that this stuff is going on more than it really is.
Yeah, I don't know. Like you said, it really does seem like it's more of a bandwagon kind of effect.
Yeah.
That people like to hop on, whatever, fuck you. that seems like, especially after 2019, like, there's just been so many fucking UFO sightings. Like, even today, but, like, in our current event, we have COVID-19 going on, we have, the riots going on and all that stuff like that. And it seems like no one's really focused on it. I'm sure if you looked up UFO sightings on 6/13/2020, I can guarantee you there's not going to be fucking jack shit except for two dumbasses in whatever the fuck southern state. I don't know why. I live in a southern state. There's mostly dumb shits down here.
Yeah, we're southwest.
Yeah.
We're not the south, but we're southwest.
Yeah. I'm just saying, like, if you look it up, I can almost guarantee there's not going to be a lot. And that's just because there's no premise.
Yeah, the climate's different right now. Nobody's going to want to talk about it. So it's not popular, then nobody's going to want to talk about it,
Mm-hmm. And I mean, back in the day, in 1947, it was a real fear. And I don't think it was a bandwagon kind of thing back then. Nowadays, I don't know, just with how I know millennials as, because I'm one of them, and how Generation Z is, we're fucking attention-hungry dipshits.
Yeah, we really are.
And, I mean, fuck, we're making a podcast right now. Like, let's be real.
In this climate?
Yeah, and we're so attention hungry that we have to push past that. But at least I can accept that, and I know that about myself.
Yeah.
And I thought I was special in that aspect, but so many fucking people want to be famous.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't matter how, and it doesn't matter why. I've heard of people that have fucking walked in and admitted that they murdered someone involved with a very popular case at the time, like the Black Dahlia murder.
Oh, that happened like
this is separate.
With the Zodiac killer too. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's just so many people like, oh yeah, I'm the killer. It's like, no, you just want to be famous, you fucking piece of shit.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's just one of those things that it's not going to go away anytime soon. And if anybody tells you that they've seen an alien, it's a cool story to hear. I'm not going to lie. It is a cool story here. My grandma has a story. I'm sure my mom probably has a fucking story. I have my own story. I'm not even going to lie.
Well, what's your story? I want to hear that. I don't personally have one, so it's like kind of hard for me to, relate to this stuff. But I do like hearing about it. Like, I won't lie, I do like hearing this stuff.
Yeah, and that's my point. It's just it's one of those things. It's the same thing as ghost stories or whatever. It's just an interesting topic, regardless. But my story, it was. I think I was going up to this area. Yeah, I was going up to this area in my hometown of Globe, Arizona. And there is a campground called Pinal. Like we just call it the Pinals. They call it Pinal Mountain, whatever. If you live there, you know. But generally, it's called the Pinals. And it's not that high of a mountain. You drive up there. There's campgrounds scattered across the place. And we drive up to the very tippy top. At the very tippy top, there's this cell tower. And we parked there, we started drinking, blah, 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 bullshitting, and we went exploring, and the buddies I was with were like, oh, fuck it, let's just walk through the woods for a little bit. If we want to turn around, we can just turn around. And, we just wanted to go on an adventure. Mm. We walked about, 10, 15 minutes, and, just slow trudging walk, and there were just little fucking, almost like fireflies, but it kind of seemed like they were too organized because they were fluttering about. And it's so fucking weird that I thought of them as fireflies at the time. Whenever I looked to my left and my right, there were no fucking fireflies to my side, right? And this sounds weird, but I don't know why this stood out to me so much. So we keep walking. And the more we notice these firefly kind of lights, we start noticing that there's a canyon that kind of drops off into the mountain. And we noticed that all those lights weren't close to us. They were far away from us. And admittedly, they might have spiked my drink. I don't even fucking know. But this is a vivid fucking memory. All right. There were fireflies in front of me. We walk we walk closer and closer to what is essentially a cliff because, we can see down the mountain. And there's just a fuck ton of lights in the forest for no reason. And we didn't really think that much about it. I was a little bit creeped out, but we were just kind of talking about it, what the fuck even is that? And then one of my friends was like, hey, you know what, it was getting to be 2 o'clock in the morning or some shit.
Yeah.
We turn around and we start walking away. And as we're walking away, or we're about to walk away, all of the fucking lights just turn off, and then a huge gust of wind just fucking went through the trees.
It was the fucking
and I'm not
ship.
saying and I'm not saying a regular kind of wind. It was a fucking a big ass wind. Huh. And needless to say, we fucking scattered.
Yeah.
And we got back and we were bullshitting about it, being like, okay, that was fucking weird. But it was just one of those weirdest fucking memories. The more I think about it, I'm like, okay, I guess it could have been one. But I'm such a skeptical person, especially the way I'm telling this right now. I apologize. I know it's so fucking scattered. I am very drunk. But it's one of those memories that sticks with you. And especially when you let your mind get ahead of itself, you seem to come to the conclusions that it might be something paranormal or extraterrestrial. And that is almost most people. A lot of people can explain it away. With my situation, I don't really know how to explain it away because I do remember it pretty vividly. but I know that back in the day I did a lot of drugs, and that might have influenced my current memory.
Might have been
regardless,
a contributor.
But I didn't take hallucinogens or anything like that, so I don't know why I remember that so well. But I mean, like, that really just comes down to how much you believe in aliens themselves. Like, if you believe in aliens...
That's what I was going to say, too, is, like, we should probably discuss, like, the possibility of them even being real. And, given that there's so many stories and stuff like that, like, I've heard people say, it only takes one of those stories to be real. And I kind of agree with that mindset. Like, honestly, there's thousands upon thousands upon thousands of stories of aliens, of UFOs, all that stuff. And really, all it takes is just one of those stories to be real for them to be real. And not only that, but just, scientifically speaking, I feel like somebody could back me up on this, but I feel like scientifically speaking, it could be a possibility because I don't know. I have a hard time believing that we're in this vast universe by ourselves. Now, whether or not, like I was saying, if they were able to come from outside our solar system and visit us and stuff, who knows? I don't know if they're capable of doing that, but I definitely think that there's a definite possibility of them existing. Like, I do fully 100% believe that there's aliens. I just don't.
Me as well.
I don't know. I can't really say that we've ever seen one. And like I was talking with the abduction, I don't really see why they would come here. We do things that are kind of strange. Like, we send out satellites full of our information and stuff like that in case there's alien life.
Voyager 1 and stuff like that.
Yeah, like those things. Like, so, I could see where, they would be driven to visit us if they knew of our existence, but I think if they were going to visit, it wouldn't be subtle. You know what I mean? And I don't ever expect them to be hostile either, like in most interpretations, like in most movies and stuff like that. I wouldn't think they would come here to declare war. I think if they were advanced enough to visit something outside of their solar system and stuff like that, they wouldn't come here and just want to destroy us. Because there is that whole scenario like, well, what if their planet is dying and they need resources from us? If they could travel to another fucking planet, why would they come to ours and just take our shit? Why wouldn't they find another one that was uninhabited? Why would they put themselves at that risk of fighting us? That doesn't make any sense. So, for me, it doesn't make sense that they would come here and visit us. Really, I don't see any reason why they would visit us other than personal curiosity. But just they would also. There's so many risk factors in them visiting us that I just don't really think they've ever been here. I do think they exist 100%, but I don't think they've ever visited Earth.
Yeah, I agree. There are a lot of references to aliens, but they are often misinterpreted by religious references. Almost every single, History Channel bullshit that you watch, which, by the way, isn't the fucking History Channel anymore.
No, History Channel is just fucking nonsense. Literal nonsense.
They've turned it on, any religious scriptures or anything like that being, proof of existence of aliens, when no, like, we believe a lot of crazy shit, and we've always believed a lot of crazy shit, and that's mostly for morale boost, you know what I mean? Especially back in the day when it was literally your little village against the fucking world, and if you told your whole story to, if you told some crazy ass story to your village and being like, hey, we came from these gods, are we gonna let these fucking pieces of shit win? That's where a lot of, like, this kind of mythological kind of stuff comes from. And I think it can be turned into aliens eventually, but I don't think there's any truth to it regardless. I'm very, very skeptical of religion and aliens. I don't think that there's no aliens. I don't think there's no God necessarily. But, eventually things like the History Channel tend to claim that they're one and the same, and that's not fucking true. I think that they do exist. I think that we just haven't experienced them yet. There's always the possibility that if they do exist, they aren't on the same level as us. We might be the most advanced civilization in our universe. We might not be. They might be more advanced. There might be several fucking other aliens. There might be, little microbes on a planet fucking 50 million light years from here. Or there might be just like deer or bison and shit. Like there's no actual like humanoid kind of aliens. And that's what is the difference between aliens and intelligent life. That is the claim for a lot of sci-fi movies and stuff like that, is because that's what our ultimate search is for, is intelligent life. I would shit my pants if I just knew there was a fucking cow on like Goldilocks or some shit, like whatever the fuck that other planet was. I think it's called Goldilocks, I'm not sure. But it's one of those things that honestly, even when we do figure it out, I don't really know if we're going to be able to handle it very well.
Yeah.
And I mean, shit, even with certain things like the Fermi paradox, do you know what that is?
No.
So the Fermi paradox, named after an Italian-American physicist named Enrico Fermi, was the apparent contradiction between the lack of evidence for extraterrestrial civilizations and various high estimates for their probability, such as optimistic estimates for the Drake equation. This is just in my notes. It's kind of weird. I don't know what the Drake equation is, so fucking sorry.
So just fuck you, basically.
Yeah, so sorry, guys. But essentially, his whole thing is, if there is aliens, where are they? And
fair question.
It is kind of one of those things, like, it's been a long fucking time that we've been evolving as humans. A long time. And even before that, like, aliens might have even visited our planet before we were even here. And why haven't we found evidence of that? And it's one of those things, like I was saying before, they might just not be as advanced as us, or they might be on the same level as us. I mean, we don't know how to fucking do interstellar travel.
Yeah.
We're barely trying to get to Mars right now.
Yeah, and that's my thing too, is we always, in every sort of depiction of aliens, we always interpret them as being some sort of humanoid, being, and they might not be. They might be less advanced. We, like you said, we might be the most advanced in our universe, and we would never know it. And they might also be so advanced that they can't even communicate with us. Like, nobody ever thinks of that. Like, they might be so far beyond us that they wouldn't even know how to communicate with us. Like, it would be like us trying to communicate with, microorganisms. To microorganisms, we're aliens. They may live on us and stuff. Like, well, you might even not know it, but Earth might be a fucking alien for all we know. We might be living on some being of something else. There's so many different ways to look at it that they could exist, but we might not ever see one in our lifetimes. We might not ever see one in the existence of humankind, just simply because we lack the communication, we lack the knowledge, they lack the knowledge, they lack the communication. But I always find that interesting too, to just think that maybe they're so far advanced or so under advanced that they can't communicate, and that they do exist though.
Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things, like, you have to also think about their physiology. I mean, they might not, because we have very blatant ways on how, or blatant theories on how life is created. We know that certain aspects of life, like our plants and our trees and stuff like that, they breathe carbon dioxide. We breathe oxygen. Fish have a way to filter water so they can also breathe oxygen. But if we've already found such complex ways to feed and, nurture our brains in such a way, like fucking plants with photosynthesis and all that stuff. There are obviously more complex ways that an alien life can sustain their own. And so I don't think that even if there is intelligent life, they might have different ways to survive. If they see our planet, they see oxygen in our atmosphere, and they happen to breathe some crazy shit like nitrogen or something like that, then they'll be like, oh, fuck that, I'm not going there.
Yeah.
That's the same way we look at Venus. Like, Venus has a highly corrosive atmosphere and highly pressurized, like within, like if you go past a certain field or whatever the fuck, I can't remember verbatim, but you fall to the surface, one of us, we'll get crushed into paste. But certain aliens might just have a completely different physiology that we might not even be able to comprehend, simply because all we can view is what is on our world.
Yeah. And it's hard to think outside of that box, too. It's, I tried to put myself in a different mindset when we were thinking about this stuff. Specifically for the podcast, because like before I had my own opinions, but I was trying to think of it a little more outside of the box, and that was where I came up with maybe they're either so far advanced or so under advanced that they couldn't communicate and things like that. Like, it's just stuff that I've never thought of before. So I really do think that it gives a lot of thought to why we're probably never going to see one. I don't think that has anything to do with whether or not they exist. I'm almost 100% convinced they do. There's just no way of ever knowing if we're going to be able to see one or if we're ever going to get, confirmation that they exist. I think other than us, traveling outside of our world, which, it seems like we're kind of pushing that way, and we kind of have to, because, if we start going to the topic of, the environment and the way that we've treated Earth, I think we're probably going to have to start thinking about leaving Earth if we're going to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, like I posed the question at the beginning of the podcast, what will we end up becoming aliens? Will we end up being the ones that visit somewhere else? And I honestly think that's a valid question to ask ourselves too, because like I said, the Earth, it's not going to last forever. We're going to have to think of a different home.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't know, I want to start talking about that a little bit. Like, what do you think the chances are of us leaving Earth? What do you think, do you think we could end up being the ones that visit some other being instead of vice versa? Because, when we think of aliens, we always think of them as them visiting us, but maybe it'll be the other way around. Maybe we are the advanced species. Maybe we go and visit these alien beings on their planet. Like, what do you think about that?
I do think that. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. I think we should... Yeah, there's no fucking way. I think in our lifetime we might be able to see us colonize our solar system, hopefully, because I am so obsessed with that shit.
I wish.
I hope in my lifetime I'm going to be able to see us be able to make a way station on the moon, make a colony on Mars, and then later colonize Titan, one of the moons of Jupiter. But after that, that's when it gets a lot more fucking complicated, because we can colonize our solar system all we want. We know for a fact nothing exists except us here.
Yep.
But, the more we go out and explore space, and the more we do these tests on interstellar travel, I guess you could say, just within our own solar system, the more we're going to be able to know whether we're going to be able to go beyond our own solar system, or to another solar system, or even to another galaxy. And I know it's not going to happen within our lifetime. I know that that specific, going beyond our own galaxy, especially, there's no fucking way. But I do think that's very possible. I think us as humans, we have to go and colonize everything, or we're just very curious. Whether it's, whether our intention is hostile or not, I think it's kind of the same way that we view aliens. Like aliens, if they visit us, they're either going to be nice or they're fucking not going to be nice.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's no reason for us to expect that aliens can be any less complicated than us. You know, they might have their own politics and shit like that if they were to visit us, and we'll probably have our own politics about visiting another planet. And it's one of those things like, if we go to another planet, would we surveil them? And that's where it brings you back to, like, why would we be abducted in the first place? You know, like, why would we want to abduct another species? Why couldn't we just surveil them? And it kind of just goes in a circle after a while, just because, you know, I do think it's possible, but it's just as possible as aliens visiting us within our lifetime as well. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it definitely makes you think about this stuff. But yeah, honestly, like you said, it could just, I mean, eventually it just all sort of leads into itself. You just kind of end up looping yourself into a circle. Because, yeah, I could see where, you know, when I think of it in terms of humans, like, what would we do if we found another alien? Would we just observe them, or would we invade? And I don't know, just thinking on terms of how humans behave, I could definitely see where we would be inclined to attack them instead of observe them peacefully. I mean, we have, you know, just going back through our history of attacking ourselves instead of observing. I mean, you go back to, like, the Westerners colonizing, you know, attacking the Native Americans instead of just observing them or trying to treat them friendly. Granted, we've grown a lot since then, but also we haven't really, if you know anything about the current climate, we haven't really known, or we haven't really learned how to treat each other with respect. So why would we really treat some alien, you know, race with respect and try to learn and observe their ways instead of just brute forcing our way into everything like we do everything else?
Mm-hmm.
All we do is have a history of attacking and destroying and taking instead of asking and, you know, trying to live and let live. So, yeah, I mean, I honestly think that there, you know, is just equally the possibility of us becoming the aliens as far as being visited by them. But I think I feel like if one or the other happens, you know, I don't know. I originally said it wouldn't be violent, but I kind of now think that it might be. Just like I said, looking back at how humans have treated humans, I couldn't see us, you know, even if they came peacefully, I could honestly think that we would probably end up being the dickholes that started something. And that happens in movies and all sorts of other science fiction things.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just honestly feel like it's probably not going to be a good thing if we ever do get visited by aliens or visit aliens. So, as much as I'd like to see it happen in my lifetime, I also don't want to see it happen in my lifetime, just based off of that assumption that it's probably going to end violently, and, you know, depending on what side we're on, or if we're the visitor or the visitee, might end badly for us. And, you know, don't want anything to end badly in my lifetime with aliens. I can tell you that.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree with you. It's 50-50 all the way around. Aliens could invade us. We can get fucked up. We can invade aliens. We could be the aliens, and we could still get fucked up. It doesn't really matter. I think it's about time to actually wrap up, right?
Yeah, it's looking that way.
All right. You know, if there's any takeaway on, you know, my 2 cents, if there's any takeaway, just remember that your government is hiding shit from you.
Yeah.
It just might not be what you think it is. And we might fucking eventually become aliens to another species one day. But we won't be able to fucking do that if we're not okay with our own goddamn species. All right?
Yeah.
So look at your fellow human being and love him or her, because one day you might be fighting a fucking alien.
Yeah. I'm the same. My 2 cents is that we have equal chances of being the alien or, you know, being visited by one, and that, yeah, we gotta get our shit in place. We're a mess. I mean, 2020, and we're still fighting amongst ourselves about the color of our skin.
Yeah.
Can't imagine that we're going to treat an alien so kindly if he's a fucking green person or something, you know what I mean? Like, fuck.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I mean, the takeaway is let's get our shit straight so that way if an alien does visit us or we go visit an alien, we don't fucking start something we don't want to. And I do honestly think that they're real. So let's start getting shit in line, guys. Let's start getting ready for that, because I think the next step in our human evolution is to start looking towards the stars and to start hopefully reaching out to other species that exist. So anyway, on that note, we're going to wrap things up, guys. Thank you so much for listening. If you guys enjoyed it, please, tell your friends about it, tell your family, tell anybody you can. Obviously, look out for future episodes. We're going to be trying to pump these out. I'm thinking, like every week or 2 weeks. We're going to figure out the schedule with that. But we got, a whole bunch of episodes lined up and ready to go. And like I said, again, thank you guys. Sean, if you want to go ahead and say a few things.
Yeah, no problem. If you guys could leave reviews on whatever way you're listening to this podcast, that helps us out a shit ton. That helps us get sponsors later. That helps us be able to maybe get a workspace so we can keep doing the podcast, get researchers, and also help us maybe to afford the fucking whiskey that I'm drinking, because this shit's expensive.
Yeah, I just spent like $30 on my alcohol.
Yeah, I think my whiskey was like $50-$60.
Eesh. So,
yeah, I mean, outside of that, you can find us at facebook.com/Tipplers 2 Cents. We might be working on an Instagram page if Chris wants to post the pictures of the debris, the videos and stuff like that. We'll probably have that up. I don't know the the name of it because I don't think we've made an Instagram, but next episode I will completely put that in and make sure that it is a real thing. But for now, all we have is facebook.com/Tipplers 2 Cents. And I really hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope that you guys drink responsibly and think responsibly.
Yeah, we thank you guys so much. We'll catch you guys on the very next episode of Tipplers 2 Cents. Thank you guys for listening. Oh, bye-bye.
Bye.